The night had wrapped itself in a veil of mist, heavy and pale, so that even the proudest oak in the forest seemed to stoop beneath its weight. The moon, that solitary guardian of sleepless souls, cast her weary light through the lattice of branches, and the beams trembled upon the earth as if they, too, were uncertain whether they should remain or vanish. I had long been accustomed to such nights. Nights of silence, nights of solitude, nights that stretched like an unbroken chain across the years of my life. It is in such stillness that I must confess the truth of my existence. From the hour of my birth, a curse was bound to me, a cruel and invisible chain that shackled not my limbs, but my very heart. Love, which to others came as naturally as the breath they drew, was to me a forbidden flame. Each time I dared reach for warmth, it froze into bitter frost. Each time sweetness touched my lips, it dissolved into tasteless air. The curse decreed that I should live untouched, unloved and unloving, and yet I, foolish, stubborn, yearning creature that I am, still tested the curse, as though the 1,000 failures of yesterday might somehow be overturned by the 1,001st attempt today. My hand, pale in the moonlight, reached down to a flower trembling on its stalk, a small white bloom that shone with innocent grace. For one fragile moment, I imagined that the curse might have weakened, that the bloom might remain unscathed beneath my fingers. But no sooner had I touched it than the petals shriveled, their silken form crumbling into dust, as though the flower itself recoiled from my touch. I withdrew my hand, heavy with sorrow, but not with surprise. Such was the law of my life, such was the sentence written upon my soul. And yet, though I had long believed my fate unchangeable, though I had sworn myself to solitude and silence, on that night, beneath that moon, something stirred in the distance. Through the veil of mist, at the edge of the shadowed path, I saw the outline of a figure, tall, unmoving, yet unmistakably alive. He stood as though carved from the night itself, and though I could not yet see his face, I felt the weight of his gaze pressing upon me. My breath caught, for never before had anyone dared to come so close. My mind, trained by years of hopelessness, whispered that it was but an illusion, another phantom conjured by loneliness. Yet my heart, long silent, long numb, thrummed with a faint, rebellious beat. I thought my destiny had been written, I whispered into the hush of the forest, my voice trembling with a confession I had never dared to speak aloud. But that was before I met him. And as the mist parted ever so slightly, I beheld the stranger watching me, his presence shattering the silence of my cursed existence. Yet when the shadows deepened once more and I turned to seek him again, he was gone, swallowed by the forest as though he had never been. Thus I returned, trembling in both wonder and dread, to the life that had long been mine alone, my dwelling, if one might grace it with so noble a word, was a tower of gray and crumbling stone, standing apart from village and road alike, as if the very earth had conspired with my curse to banish me from human fellowship. There I lived, if such a weary existence may be called living, amidst shelves of moldering tomes, whose pages whispered forgotten incantations, and amongst curious relics of old magic, their purpose as faded as their guilt. Day after day, I sought in those books some clue, some charm, some remedy against the cruel enchantment that bound my heart in chains of frost. But each attempt ended as fruitless as the last. Thus my companions were not of flesh and blood, but feather and wing. The birds of the forest, tender-hearted in their innocence, would perch upon my sill and lend their small songs to cheer my solitude. To them I confided secrets I could not dare entrust to man. To them I whispered the dreams I scarcely admitted to myself. And yet, for all their grace, a bird's song cannot fill the silence of a soul that yearns to be heard, nor can their bright eyes replace the steady gaze of one who sees you not as a curiosity, but as a kindred spirit. Often did I ascend the winding stairs to the highest window of my tower, and there, through the veil of distance, I gazed upon the village that lay nestled in the valley. I watched children race across the green, their laughter like bells carried on the wind. I saw mothers clasping babes to their breasts, and fathers returning from the fields with weary steps but warm embraces. These sights, so common to others, pierced me with both longing and resignation, for I could only observe, never partake. My life was a portrait framed in glass. I could see, but never touch. So it was that on one such evening, the mist heavy upon the forest and my heart no lighter than the stones of my prison, I ventured once more to the wood's edge. And there, strange providence, I beheld him again. Not a phantom conjured by loneliness, not a figment dissolved by dawn, but a man of flesh and breath, standing where the moonlight fell upon the path. His countenance was unfamiliar, yet unmarred by suspicion. His garments bore the dust of long travel, and in his eyes, those gentle, steady eyes, I perceived neither fear nor disdain, but a curiosity tempered with kindness. He looked upon me as one might look upon a fellow soul, not as a creature to be shunned nor a shadow to be fled. In that moment my heart, which had known naught but the weight of ice, trembled as though it remembered warmth. For the first time in all my years, there was someone who did not fear me. And though my heart trembled with this new and perilous wonder, I scarcely dared to breathe, lest the fragile vision dissolve as swiftly as it had appeared. Yet he remained steadfast and unflinching, as though the very mist had parted only to reveal him. At length he spoke. His voice, low and measured, carried the timbre of distant roads and sleepless nights beneath foreign stars. "I am but a traveler," said he, "wandering in search of something lost, something precious, though I cannot name it to you now." He smiled, not as one who hides a cruel jest, but as one whose soul is burdened with secrets too heavy for casual speech. And though his words told me little, his tone conveyed more than he knew. Here was a man who bore the weight of longing, as I did, though his chains were of another kind. Compelled by a mixture of dread and curiosity, I inclined my head in cautious greeting. Yet as he stepped nearer, the air about me seemed to shift. The birds who so often fled at the merest stir of my power did not stir. The branches, which shuddered whenever I reached forth my hand, remained still. I felt the familiar ache in my breast, the warning that my curse would soon assert its cruel dominion. I raised my hand in alarm, motioning him to halt. But he, unheeding or perhaps unafraid, extended his hand towards mine. My breath caught in terror. Had I not seen 1,000 times the effect of such contact? The warmth of affection turning to ice, the glow of admiration extinguished into contempt, the gentle hand recoiling as though scorched by unseen fire. "Stop!" I cried, my voice sharp with despair. "You know not what you risk." He did not stop. His fingers drew nearer, closer still, until only a breath of air separated our hands. The curse should have risen then, should have forced him back with invisible force, should have frozen his heart and driven him to abandon me. But no such calamity came. Instead, his hand lingered beside mine, so close that I could feel its warmth tremble upon my skin. Yet no pain, no frost, no desolation followed. His eyes met mine, calm, unwavering, suffused with a gentleness I had never known. And in that instant, the iron law that had ruled my life bent, if not broke, before my astonished gaze. I drew my hand away in trembling confusion, staring at him as though he were a phantom conjured not by curse but by mercy. My voice, scarcely more than a whisper, escaped my lips. Who is he, that he stands untouched by the malice which has governed every soul I have ever known? Who is he, and by what power does he break the law that binds me? I asked within the silence of my soul. Yet though no answer came from heaven or earth, my heart whispered what my lips dared not. He was unlike any man I had known, and I was powerless to banish him from my thoughts. In the days that followed, my solitude was broken as it had never been before. Where once the echo of my own footsteps had been my only companion, there was now another voice, his voice, filling the hollows of my lonely tower with questions, with laughter, and with a warmth that I had long believed forever denied to me. Little by little, against the tyranny of my own fears, I began to show him fragments of the life I had hidden, the books of ancient lore, the relics of forgotten kings, the spells half learned and half feared. All these I unveiled, not to boast, but because I longed for him to see me as I truly was. Curse and all, he did not shrink. He did not turn away. Indeed, it was he who urged me beyond the stone walls that had become my prison, to walk once more beneath the open sky. "Come," he said, with a smile that disarmed every protest upon my tongue. "The world is wide, and you were not meant to be caged within it." And so it was that, For the first time since my childhood, I walked the path to the village, not alone, but with him at my side. My steps faltered as the cottages came into view, for I knew too well the whispers that awaited me. True enough, no sooner had we set foot upon the square than the murmur of voices rose like a chill wind. I heard them, those sharp hissing syllables that carried both fear and disdain. There she is, the cursed one. Keep your children close. Do not meet her eye. Their words fell upon me like stones, each one reopening an old wound. Yet before despair could reclaim me, I felt the stranger's presence firm beside me. His gaze, steady as the oak, met the fearful eyes of the crowd. Where they stepped back, he stepped forward. Where they whispered, he stood silent, a shield of calm defiance between me and their judgment. My heart, long frozen, long resigned to silence, stirred with a sensation that bewildered me. It was not merely gratitude, nor the fleeting comfort of protection. It was something deeper, something perilous, a warmth that spread within me, as if my very soul dared to thaw. Each breath quickened, each glance, each word from him, pressed upon me with a sweetness that both delighted and terrified. I had no name for this feeling. I feared to give it one, lest by naming it I should summon the wrath of the curse anew. Yet as I walked through the village, whispers trailing us like shadows, and felt his hand brush lightly against mine, not recoiling, not fading, but remaining, I knew with dreadful certainty that something forbidden had awoken within me. And in the quiet of my heart, trembling yet resolute, the question formed, is this the feeling that has been forbidden me all my life? I asked myself, even as the murmur of voices thickened around us, rising from whispers to open protest. Where once suspicion had been murmured behind shutters, it now rang boldly in the daylight, spoken by lips that scarcely feared my hearing. "She brings misfortune," cried one, clutching her child close as though I were pestilence itself. "Why does she walk among us now?" muttered another, his eyes darting between me and the stranger. And yet another, louder still, declared, "Drive them out! The curse will fall upon us all if she lingers." Their words pressed against me more cruelly than winter's frost. I had endured such scorn all my life, yet never had it wounded me so deeply as it did then. For now it was not only my own fate they threatened, but his. The stranger, who had given me courage to step forth from my solitude, now stood condemned by association, and I feared their suspicion would soon turn into action. I could not, must not, drag him into the abyss that had always been mine. In a moment of despair, I resolved within myself, better to withdraw, better to return to my tower of silence, than to see him suffer the hatred that clung to me like a shroud. I opened my lips to bid him farewell, to release him from the burden of my company. But before I could speak, his voice rang clear above the murmur of the crowd. "I did not come this far," he declared, his tone calm yet unyielding, "to abandon her now. If you see danger in her presence, then you must also see the truth in mine, that I remain unharmed, untouched, and unafraid. Your fear is not her doing, but your own." A hush fell, though the anger did not depart. His words shielded me for that moment, yet I knew too well how fragile a shield it was against the storm of suspicion. Still, when I looked upon his steadfast gaze, I felt a spark of hope flicker where despair had sought to reign. But hope is a delicate thing, easily shaken. As we walked from the square, my eyes caught a dreadful sign. Flowers that had once bloomed in the cracks of stone now drooped lifelessly where my steps had fallen. The curse, long held at bay, was stirring once more, its unseen fingers stretching towards all who lingered near me. And with terror rising in my breast, I whispered to myself, is the shadow of my fate strong enough to destroy even him? That question haunted me still as the evening of the village feast arrived. And yet, against reason, against the whispers that hissed like snakes in the dark, I found myself walking at his side into the square, where lanterns swayed like captive stars, and music trembled sweetly through the air. For the first time in all my memory, the eyes of the villagers did not fix upon me with only dread. Some, softened by the stranger's presence, allowed their suspicion to rest. Others, caught in the tide of celebration, forgot, if only for a fleeting hour, that I was marked by an ancient doom. Children ran with ribbons, laughter clattered like bells, and the scent of bread and spiced wine filled the night. I dared to think, perhaps I too may belong among them. I danced no dance, but his hand was steady at my side, guiding me past the tables where smiles were tentatively offered. With each moment that passed, I felt my heart rise, trembling like a caged bird daring to test its wings. For one fragile hour, I believed myself no longer the outcast, but a soul among souls. Then, without warning, the lights faltered. One lantern flickered, then another, until the square shuddered in sudden darkness. A chill wind, not born of nature, swept low through the crowd, spiraling in cruel circles. I knew its touch before it brushed my skin. The curse had awakened. Gasps broke from the villagers. Mothers gathered children to their breasts, men pulled back in fear, and the music died in a discordant cry of strings. In that darkness, petals fell from garlands overhead, shriveled to dust before they touched the ground. The feast dissolved into terror, and once more the space around me was emptied, as though I were plague, and the people fled for their lives. But not he. Amidst the fear, amidst the rustle of fleeing feet and the accusing eyes that found me even in shadow, his hand did not release mine. Fingers firm, warmth unbroken, he stood, still, unshaken, unafraid. My voice trembled when I turned to him. "Why remain?" I asked, each word born of anguish and wonder alike. "Why stand beside me when all others cast me away?" His gaze met mine, steady as a flame in the storm, and with a quiet strength that pierced the tumult, he said, "Because I see you, not the curse that binds you." His words lingered in my chest, like the final trembling note of a hymn. They warmed me, lifted me, until at last I could no longer deny what I had long feared to feel. For in his steadfast presence my solitude cracked, and from the ruins of despair blossomed something I had believed forever denied me. Love. Yes, I loved him. And one evening, beneath the weary glow of twilight, when the world seemed hushed and only the murmur of leaves bore witness, I confessed it. "You have undone me," I whispered. "You have shown me life beyond shadows. I love you, though the curse forbids it." For a moment, silence. His face, half lit by the dying sun, was unreadable, caught between tenderness and a burden I did not yet understand. Then, slowly, he drew in breath, and the world itself seemed to pause. "I must tell you," he said at last, and the softness of his voice made the blow strike all the harder. "I am not the man you believe me to be." My heart, newly born, faltered in its beating. He turned from me, as though ashamed of the light that revealed too much. "I am no simple wanderer. I was sent by those who forged your fate, by the very kingdom of sorcery that chained your heart in this cruel enchantment." His voice shook, though not from weakness, but from the weight of confession. "I was to watch you, to guard the curse, not break it, to ensure you would never escape its grasp." The air seemed to collapse around me, heavy with betrayal. Each word he spoke drove deeper the blade of disillusion. His hand, once a sanctuary, now felt like iron shackles closing round my spirit. "So," I breathed, scarcely able to summon the strength for words. "All this kindness, all these days beside me, all these promises." My throat burned, my heart raged, my very soul trembled. They were but lies? And though his eyes shone with sorrow, though his lips parted as if to protest, the truth hung between us like a gallows rope. "Tell me," I demanded, though my voice was scarcely more than a whisper torn by grief. "Was everything we shared nothing but a falsehood?" He did not answer, and in the silence, I felt the fragile world I had dared to build collapse to dust. "So, all of this was nothing but a lie?" My voice still echoed in the empty hall of my tower. Though he had long since departed into the night, the echo mocked me, an orphaned sound in a house of ghosts. I had fled the village feast, fled his confession, fled even the trembling hope in my own heart. The loneliness that once felt like a second skin now returned as a wound, raw and bleeding. I thought myself strong enough to live without love, but now, bereft of trust, I was weaker than ever. I closed the shutters of my tower, shut away the moonlight, and wrapped myself once more in my old solitude. The books of sorcery lay about me like gravestones. I swore never to step beyond these walls again. Better to be alone than deceived. Better to be cursed than betrayed. And yet, before dawn's first pale ribbon touched the sky, he came. No longer cloaked in secrecy, no longer pretending to be what he was not. He stood at my threshold with rain in his hair and fire in his eyes. "I lied," he said, voice ragged as torn cloth. "I lied at first because I had been ordered to. But everything changed when I met you. I am no longer their servant. I am yours if you will have me. I want to free you, though it may cost me my own soul." I stared at him through tears unshed, my hands trembling upon the doorframe. "Free me after all this?" "Yes," he said simply. "There is a way, a forbidden way. It was never meant to be spoken, yet I learned it because I could not bear to watch you bound forever. To break your curse, you must surrender all magic that flows within you. Every drop, every spark. You will become what you have never been. Ordinary. Your powers, your name, your very identity as a witch, gone." The tower fell silent at his words, as though the stones themselves listened. My heart thundered with a storm of fear and longing. All I had ever been, all the hours I had survived in exile, all the strength that had shielded me, would vanish. Could I bear such a loss? Could I trade myself for a life that might, in the end, still prove a mirage? "I cannot decide for you," he said softly. "I can only stand with you, whatever you choose." I turned from him, the walls of the tower pressing close, the window open to the night wind. My fingers clenched upon the cold sill as if it were the last solid thing in a dissolving world. "Do I dare?" I whispered to the darkness. "Do I dare lose everything I am, for a love that might yet be only a shadow?" I stood between two paths, the curse that defined me, and a freedom that might destroy me, and at last I did not know which road my heart would choose. But then, with the wind rushing through the trees like the breath of fate itself, I found my answer. "I choose," I whispered, my voice breaking, "to be free." He held me then, his eyes burning with both fear and hope, as we stepped together into the clearing where the curse had first been bound upon me. The air was thick with ancient power, the ground trembling as though it remembered my sorrow. I raised my hands that had once withered roses and stilled the beating warmth of every tender thing. Light began to gather in my palms, first as a trembling glow, then as a torrent. My veins seared with fire, my breath caught as though the very soul within me were being pulled away. "Stay with me," he cried, clasping me tighter, as though his voice could anchor me against the storm. And then it happened, the release. The magic that had shackled me since birth burst forth in a flood of silver fire, rushing to the heavens, scattering like 1,000 falling stars. The forest glowed as though dawn had come too soon, every leaf and branch gilded with radiance. The weight that had crushed my chest for years lifted, and for one glorious instant, I felt empty. Empty, but free. Darkness followed. My body, no longer cradled by power, crumbled beneath its loss. I fell, but he caught me, his arms strong and sure. The last thing I heard was his voice calling my name, fierce and desperate, before the world dissolved into silence. When I opened my eyes again, the light of day streamed gently through the canopy above. I breathed, and the air was new. No power stirred in me. No enchantment curled around my heart. I was no witch. I was only myself. And for the first time, that was enough. Tears blurred my vision as I turned my gaze to him. He was still there, his hands entwined with mine. And this time there was no fear, no shadow, no curse. Only warmth. Pure, unbroken, human warmth. "I have nothing left," I whispered. "You have everything," he answered. "For now, you have love." His fingers closed around mine, steady and gentle, and at last they did not turn to frost, but to fire, bright and living. I had lost all magic, yet in that moment I understood. I had gained something greater than every spell, every incantation, every secret of the grimoires that once surrounded me. I had gained love. "I have no sorcery left," I murmured, my voice soft as morning. "But I have you, and that is a power the world cannot undo." He smiled, not the smile of triumph, but of peace, as though he too had been unshackled. And so it was that I left behind the tower of my solitude, that crumbling monument to years of exile. With his hand in mine, we walked away from its stones, step by step, into a horizon I had never dared to claim. The village that once whispered against me now watched in silence as we passed. Some eyes were wary still, others softened with awe, but I no longer trembled beneath their judgment. For the first time, I belonged not to fear, not to curse, but to myself, and to him. As we journeyed onward, the forest opened before us, vast and unknown, yet promising. The world stretched wide, filled with paths I had never walked, skies I had never dreamed. The moon, tender and watchful, cast its silver blessing upon us, painting our two shadows long upon the road. And in that light, I found my truth, narration, my voice steady with new life. I lost my magic, but I found something stronger than any sorcery: love. And love, I learned, is not the absence of darkness, but the courage to see the heart shining through it. Not curse, not past, not fear, only love. We walked on, side by side, into the new world that awaited us. No longer prisoner, no longer stranger, only two souls, hand in hand, beneath the eternal light of the moon.